Before we get into today's video, please quickly check to see if you're subscribed. It's totally free and allows you to never miss one of our stories. The lights in the council chamber were dimmed, casting shadows over the long semicircular bench where Terra's leaders sat in silence. Admiral Ryder adjusted his collar, glancing at the others before breaking the silence.
"Let's not sugarcoat this. They'll think we're weak,"
he said, voice low and heavy. Counselor Ava Moreno, a veteran of the Virexian conflicts, crossed her arms, leaning forward. "Let them. We've given them quite the show. Half our fleet decommissioned. Orbital defense satellites taken offline." She shook her head, the frustration clear in her eyes. "If this doesn't lull them into thinking we're out of the game, I don't know what will." Across from her, General Lansing nodded slowly.
"This is not sitting well with the public, though. People are scared. They see empty skies and think we're vulnerable."
Ryder drummed his fingers on the table, lips pressed into a thin line.
"They don't know what we've got under the waves ready to rise if needed."
Counselor Shen leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper.
"Our people need to feel safe too, Admiral. Can't we tell them we're protected?"
"No, we can't tell them anything,"
Ryder replied, his tone firm.
"The fewer who know, the better. If word leaks out about the Armada, the whole operation is a bust."
The room fell silent, each leader weighed down by the same grim truth. Terra's defenses were a facade. Behind that facade lay the Tidewake Protocol, the monumental hidden defenses deep within Terra's oceans. The Abyssal Armada, a fleet so massive, so carefully concealed, that even most council members, Shen included, hadn't seen the full scope of it. A soft chime interrupted them, signaling the end of the closed meeting. Outside, civilian chatter buzzed louder than ever, filling the vast halls with anxious murmurs. The conversation in the council chamber might have been private, but the worry outside was far from it. Crowds gathered around large screens flashing news updates, each headline grimmer than the last. Orbital defense decommissioning continues.
Fleet reduction underway as part of peace accords.
An older man standing near the front shook his head, grumbling.
"They're leaving us wide open. It's like we're letting the galaxy know just how easy it would be to come in and take whatever they want."
A young woman nearby clenched her fist, her voice trembling.
"How are we supposed to feel safe? They took down half of our orbital defenses. My brother is stationed in New Atlanta, and he said he saw them dismantling our entire outer perimeter."
Her words sparked nods and muttered agreements from the people around her. Beside her, a small group of young men, veterans from the Virexian conflict, exchanged uneasy looks. One of them, Mark, looked over at his friend.
"Feels wrong, doesn't it?"
he muttered.
"Spent years fighting tooth and nail, and now we're just taking it down, piece by piece."
His friend nodded.
"Yeah, you don't think they'll just leave everything to the bureaucrats, do you?"
Mark looked up at the screens, his jaw tight.
"They'd better have something up their sleeves."
Later that evening, Admiral Ryder and Counselor Moreno walked through the nearly empty corridors of the defense complex. She glanced sideways at him, her voice barely above a whisper.
"Ryder, you really think this is going to work? Putting everything on the Armada?"
Ryder didn't answer right away. He looked down, hands clasped behind his back.
"All I know is that if we don't do this, we'd be facing a war in unfamiliar territory, something we're not prepared for. A full-on trap, not just from the Virexians, but anyone who might be secretly plotting our demise."
Moreno shook her head, looking away.
"And if they figure out our secret?"
"We'll deal with that if it comes to it."
He stopped, turning to face her.
"But we're not helpless, Ava. For now we've got something even they won't expect. Let the Virexians think we're defenseless. Let anyone who's watching think we've lost our teeth."
She looked into his eyes, searching for any hint of doubt. She found none.
"Then let's hope they take the bait."
she murmured. Over the following months across Terra, the mood was tense. Citizens worried, some quietly fuming, others resigned. Soldiers stood down from orbital posts with little more than uncertain goodbyes. Families watched the empty skies, wondering if Terra could really defend itself if another war came. Hidden from the civilians, from the veterans, from all but a select few lay Terra's secret, an armada, resting silently in the deep, waiting for the call to rise. For now, the sea held its secrets, and the stars showed nothing but an empty, defenseless world. In the Council's view, though, that was just how they needed to look. Deep within the shadowed chambers of the Phyrexian High Council, Queen Zra-Keth leaned forward, her multifaceted eyes glinting with satisfaction as she listened to the latest reports from Terra. "They have disarmed," she hissed with delight, clasping her 4 hands as her glistening wings fluttered softly. "The Terrans are weaker than we ever imagined. Fewer ships, stripped defenses. They all but invite annihilation." Around her, the Phyrexian council members murmured approvingly, their voices carrying an undertone of derision. High Scholar Thriskar chattered his low mandibles in amusement.
"Such arrogance! To think they could have beaten us into submission so soon after the conflict. Now they protect their precious world with little more than debris in orbit."
Queen Zra-Keth's mouth twisted into a look of satisfaction.
"Yes, and they play their roles perfectly. They believe this disarmament makes them safe from further attack, protected by their precious treaties."
She paused, savoring the moment.
"But they have forgotten. We have another ally waiting. One they believe defeated. One not considered in their pact."
A series of sharp clicks and hisses rose from the council as the Phyrexians grasped her meaning. Xorval, the ancient force Terra thought destroyed, would soon return.
"Queen Zra-Keth,"
ventured Thriskar, his voice filled with a mixture of admiration and curiosity.
"Are we truly prepared to reawaken such a power? Xorval does not ally, they consume, dominate."
She regarded him coldly, her head tilting as if the question were trivial.
"No," Zakreth corrected. "Xorval is the pinnacle of existence. It has transcended the need for individuals. It serves as a perfect hive. We seek the same goal, and it will serve as the means to Terra's end. The Terrans are a nuisance, a species that must be culled before it grows more ambitious."
The council members nodded in agreement, their insectoid features reflecting their shared disdain. High Scholar Thriskar leaned forward, tapping a clawed finger on the table.
"And they truly believed the Xorval were destroyed in the last conflict?"
"Yes," she replied smoothly. "But they were not thorough. Terra, in its arrogance, assumed they wiped them out. But they are resilient, and they waited, gathering their strength." She let out a hiss, satisfied with the way the pieces were falling into place. "And now the time is perfect. Xorval will sweep across Terra's weakened defenses and leave nothing but ashes." One of the other council members, a warrior caste named Kurgath, gave a low grunt of approval.
"But they will not turn on us next, Your Eminence."
Zra-Keth's mandibles clicked together sharply, silencing any hint of doubt.
"Have you not been listening? They will destroy what we aim at them. We both seek the same goals. Should they come for us, we will deal with them. For now, though, they are an ally."
A message was prepared, encoded in the language of the hive, and transmitted out into the dark reaches of space. The Phyrexians held no illusions about Xorval's nature. Their plan was simple: direct the beast at Terra and let the chaos unfold.
"It is almost poetic, isn't it?
murmured Thriskar, watching the message fade into the void.
The Terrans so fondly call their home dirt in so many forms, and so it shall be reduced to dust, consumed by the very creatures they thought they had defeated.
Queen's Rockette's eyes sparkled with malice. Let them scurry beneath their precious dirt and pray to their silent heavens. Xorval shall answer, and when they do, Terra will be nothing but a memory. The council chamber echoed with sharp clicks and approving hisses, the Virexians confident in their plot. They would see Terra submit, the same way that Terrans had done to them. Queen's Rockette leaned back in her throne as she awaited Xorval's response. A tense silence filled the chamber, the council members' multifaceted eyes fixed on her. Moments later, a dark invasive presence slipped into their collective minds, a telepathic reply from Xorval.
Excellent news. The prey is weak. The swarm moves.
The voice resonated within their minds, deep and echoing, filled with a chilling finality.
In 2 turns of Vorlath's cycle, we will reach it. Revenge. They will know desolation.
The Virexian council members shivered slightly at the force of the connection, feeling the raw, singular power of the hive mind. Queen's Rockette's eyes sparkled with renewed malice.
2 turns of Vorlath. Excellent,
she hissed softly.
They will have no warning, no chance to resist.
The presence receded, and the Virexians relaxed, their confidence swelling. In 2 cycles, just a few short Terran months, Xorval would descend upon Terra, and the Virexians would finally see humanity broken and defeated. In the blackness of space just beyond Pluto's orbit, a ripple cut through the void, a silent distortion, the faintest shimmer against the endless dark. Within seconds, the shimmer expanded, growing into a massive shadow. First 1, then hundreds, then thousands. Xorval had returned. Their bioships appeared as if they'd grown from nightmares, massive leviathans of flesh, chitin and teeth. They were twisted forms of life, each vessel bearing the hallmarks of a hive mind, tendrils draped from the undersides, moving with an organic, unnatural grace that belied their power. Eyes, rows of them, glowed along the hulls, unblinking, watching the path ahead. A silent, relentless unity moved through the fleet, each ship pulsing with a dim bioluminescence that flickered in harmony with the others. Inside the Terran defense outpost on Luna, alarms blared. The screen showed red dots spreading across the solar map, each marking a new Xorval ship. The readings were overwhelming, and the operator in charge, Private Carter, felt his hand shaking as he watched the vast swarm.
They keep coming,
he whispered, looking up at his commanding officer, Lieutenant Perez.
There are thousands. We're picking them up all the way up from Pluto. How did they even get here without detection?
Perez's face was pale but steady. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Doesn't matter now. Patch it through to command. Private Carter complied, sending the alert to the Terran Council back home, his fingers trembling as he typed the message. In the Terran Council chambers, Admiral Ryder watched the incoming report, his face tightening. Xorval's ships were spreading fast, streaming inward from the outer solar system in a formation both fluid and precise, almost like a swarm of living entities rather than spacecraft. Counselor Shen muttered under his breath.
They are not slowing down. They're headed straight for Terra.
Ryder's jaw clenched, and he adjusted his posture, standing tall.
All according to plan. The Virexians played their part. Now we reel them in.
Counselor Moreno leaned forward, her fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on the desk. They've got more than we could have expected. Look at them. They've rebuilt, and they're not holding back. They're coming to overwhelm us. Shen exhaled slowly, nodding as he surveyed the room.
We stick to the plan. Our defenses in orbit are meant to make us look desperate, weak. We need to let them come closer. Let them think they've won.
Back in space, Xorval's ships continued their advance, looming like a massive storm cloud. Some bioships were nearly a kilometer long with dark, leathery skin stretched tight across immense, sinewy frames. Others were smaller, their shapes more compact and vicious, designed for close combat, with needle-like projections and jagged spines along their hulls. At the head of the swarm was Xorval Prime, a titanic bioship pulsing with dark energy that seemed to seep from every pore. It was covered in rows of enormous sharp teeth lining its exterior, giving it the appearance of a creature perpetually ready to consume anything in its path. Within each ship, there were no pilots, no individual minds, only the singular consciousness of Xorval, directing each ship and drone like parts of its own body. The hive mind pulsed with single-minded intent, every bioship radiating the same thought, the same purpose: destroy Terra, consume its inhabitants, and leave nothing but desolation. On Terra, civilians watched the news broadcasts with growing horror. Screens displayed Xorval's relentless approach, and commentators' voices trembled as they described the invasion.
We've just received confirmation. Dozens of massive vessels, organic in nature, have breached the solar system, and they're moving directly for Terra,
a reporter said, her face pale.
From all accounts, this appears to be Xorval.
Around her, people huddled, murmuring to one another, their faces reflecting a combination of dread and helplessness. In the crowd, one young man muttered,
"We're done for. They'll be here in hours. There's no one left to stop them."
In the council chamber, Admiral Ryder studied the display, every marker representing a Xorval bioship moving closer, faster, and with increasing precision. He glanced at the other council members, each waiting, tense and silent.
"Begin the orbital evacuation protocols,"
Ryder ordered.
"Anyone in low orbit needs to be pulled back to safety. The first wave will break through our initial defenses."
Moreno nodded, her expression grave.
"And the Armada? Are we ready?"
Ryder gave a single nod.
"We're ready, but not yet. Let them breach the perimeter first. We need them to be fully committed, no doubt in their mind that we are helpless."
A faint light of approval flickered in her eyes.
"So be it."
As Xorval reached Mars, they sent out their biodrones, small, agile creatures launched from the main ships, each capable of slicing through hulls and absorbing organic matter to fuel its fleet. They swept past Mars, thankfully ignoring the Terran colony, its vibrant green-modified potato fields, silent witnesses to the coming destruction, and accelerated toward the blue orb of Terra. When the first Xorval ships reached the edge of Terra's atmosphere, the true attack began. The Xorval bioships descended in coordinated waves, their forms twisting through the sky like dark, monstrous birds of prey. On the ground, civilians watched with horrified fascination as the sky seemed to crack open, filled with the silhouettes of ships bristling with tendrils, jaws, and blazing eyes. Xorval didn't make a sound. There were no communications, no demands, just the silent, inevitable approach. Terra's orbital defenses fired sporadically, sending bursts of plasma and missiles toward the ships, but Xorval was unfazed. Each shot was absorbed by the dense, leathery hides of the bioships or deflected by the rapid regrowth of organic armor. The assault was devastating. Coastal cities faced the worst of it as smaller Xorval ships descended lower, sending out swarms of biodrones that consumed metal glass and anything organic. People scrambled, sheltering wherever they could, but the force of the onslaught was overwhelming. From their chamber, the council watched the scene unfold in grim silence. Ryder's gaze was steely.
"They're in position."
Counselor Shen gave a short nod.
"We've let them think they've won. Now, Admiral, give the order."
Ryder straightened, his hand hovering over the panel. His voice was steady, calm despite the destruction they were witnessing.
"Prepare to activate the tide wake protocol."
The message was sent, and deep within the ocean trenches, dormant systems whirred to life. Xorval ships tore through Terra's sparse orbital defenses, their monstrous bioships weaving effortlessly through the plasma bursts and missile fire. Terra's remaining satellites and weaponized platforms burned up in seconds, their explosions little more than dim flares against the overwhelming shadow of the invading fleet. Xorval advanced without hesitation, pushing forward like a dark, unyielding tide. Below in the coastal city of Seattle, people looked to the sky, stunned as streaks of fire fell closer and closer. The air was thick with the smell of smoke, and buildings shuddered with each distant impact. Crowds gathered in parks and along waterfronts, eyes wide with disbelief.
"It's like a nightmare,"
an elderly man whispered, clutching his wife's hand as they stared upward. Nearby, a mother tried to comfort her children, shielding them from the sight of monstrous shapes descending through the clouds.
"It's okay,"
she whispered, voice shaking.
"The defense forces will hold them off. They have to."
Above the city, smaller Xorval bio-drones detach from the main ships, swarming down like locusts. They skim the tops of skyscrapers, shattering glass and tearing into steel. The drone's skin rippled, shifting color and texture as they consumed the building's materials, feeding it back to the larger ships above. Alarms blared across the city, and emergency vehicles tried to cut through the congested streets where panicked drivers abandoned their cars, fleeing on foot. The screens on every street corner flickered to life, broadcasting a live feed from the Terran Council headquarters. A grim-faced Counselor Shen looked out at the camera, his voice calm, but carrying the weight of the world.
Citizens of Terra, please remain calm and head to the nearest shelters. Our forces are doing everything they can to stop the invaders.
He paused, his voice faltering for a moment before he continued.
We are not alone in this. Know that every measure is being taken to defend our world.
In a small, crowded cafe, a group of people watched the broadcast, eyes fixed on Shen's face. A young man turned to his friend, eyes full of dread.
Do you think he's telling the truth, or is this just a goodbye speech?
The friend swallowed hard, looking away.
I don't know, but we can't just sit here. We have to get underground.
Outside, Xorval's ships drew closer to the city, their hulking forms blotting out the sun. Tendrils slithered out from the ships, latching onto buildings and dragging them down with an unsettling organic strength. Streets cracked open as biodrones burrowed beneath, their serrated claws tearing through concrete and asphalt with ease. In New York, London, Tokyo, and Sydney, similar scenes played out. Coastal cities faced the brunt of the assault as Xorval seemed to target major population centers first. The alien vessels hovered ominously above, sending down waves of biodrones that spread chaos and destruction. Civilians ran for safety, but Xorval was relentless, their attacks methodical and precise, like a predator playing with its food. Amidst the chaos in a high-rise apartment in San Francisco, an elderly woman spoke to a hologram of her daughter stationed on Luna.
"I'm fine, sweetheart. I'm just worried about you,"
she said, her voice trembling. The daughter's face, a soft projection in front of her, was set with determination.
"Don't worry, Mom. We'll get through this. They won't take us down that easily."
Her mother's hand touched the hologram's face as if trying to reach her.
"Promise me you'll be safe."
"I promise," the daughter replied, her voice wavering. The hologram flickered, and then the connection dropped. The apartment's walls shook as something enormous passed overhead, casting the room in shadow. In the Terran Council chambers, the leaders watched the carnage unfold on massive screens. Admiral Ryder gritted his teeth as he watched the footage from around the world, his fingers drumming restlessly against the control panel.
Give it a few more minutes,
he murmured through gritted teeth, witnessing the destruction.
We want to get them all.
Counselor Moreno clenched her fists, anger simmering beneath her calm exterior.
"They're slaughtering civilians. This is a massacre."
It's the only way,
Ryder replied, though his voice betrayed the weight of the decision.
If we act too soon, they'll have time to escape. We need them to truly believe we're helpless.
On the screen, Xorval forces press further inland, their biodrones spreading out from city to city, tearing through infrastructure, seemingly unstoppable. Each bioship moved in eerie unison with the others, the hive mind's control absolute. A new broadcast flared to life on every screen, every device. Counselor Shen's face appeared again, this time more somber.
To those watching, this may feel like the end, but we know that our spirit cannot be broken.
He paused, letting the weight of his words settle.
We stand together, all of us, as one.
He leaned closer, his expression fierce.
To Xorval, if you're listening to this, we are still here. You may tear through our cities, ravage our lands, but you will never claim us. Terra, as it always has, and always will, belong to the Terrans.
An explosion made the studio shudder and the broadcast went offline. Across the world, people paused, taking in the broadcast. Some found hope in his words. Others were only reminded of the bleak reality outside. But as the broadcast was brought to an abrupt end, a new kind of silence filled the air. It wasn't just fear anymore. There was a simmering resolve, a determination to endure. In the council chamber, Admiral Ryder turned to his team, his jaw set. That's the signal. They're in deep. Let's give them a reason to remember Terra. With a final look at his fellow counselors, Ryder gave the order. Activate the tide wake protocol. Far below the crashing waves, deep in the ocean's darkest trenches, massive engines came to life. The oceans, long calm in the wake of destruction above, began to stir. A faint vibration pulsed through the deep waters, unnoticed at first by the civilians huddled on shore. Within moments, the waves grew restless, a rhythmic, thunderous roar resonating through the ocean's depths. All around Terra's coastlines, the waters surged, churning as if awakened by some ancient call. In the Mariana Trench, far below sunlight's reach, the dark expanse shimmered with lights piercing through the black. Giant metal hulls, hidden for decades, began to shift. Layers of sediment, thick with the age of secrecy, slid off their sleek forms as the colossal ships rumbled to life. Their engines, silent for years, flared into motion, pulsating with newfound power. Across the Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, and Arctic oceans, more of these vessels began to stir. Each was etched with the names of symbols of Terra's proudest maritime history. Poseidon's Guard, Neptune's Wrath, Leviathan, the Odyssey. Names emblazoned in resilient steel, each representing a piece of human legacy, each an homage to a world that had never stopped fighting for survival. As the ships neared the surface, they broke through the water with a fury, casting geysers high into the sky. Across coastal cities, people gasped, eyes wide as towering forms burst from the ocean's depths. Massive starships, their hulls glistening under the sunlight, emerged one by one, engines igniting and pushing them into the sky. They rose with purpose, as if reclaiming the world they'd been designed to protect. In Seattle, where fear had once gripped the citizens, awe now took hold. Crowds along the waterfront watched, stunned, as a massive vessel broke through the waves, rising upward. Leviathan, a battleship crafted with a powerful, streamlined design, gleamed under the sun's light. Its bow was marked with the symbol of Terra's last unified navy, a proud reminder of humanity's resilience. The elderly man, still clutching his wife's hand, pointed to the ships with a tearful smile.
They did it, he whispered. All this time, they were ready.
Around the world, similar scenes played out. Terrans watched, breathless, as more ships rose from the oceans, each one a testament to Terra's unyielding spirit. The Armada was not merely a force of war. It was a symbol of survival, a legacy forged in battles past, now reborn to defend humanity once more. In the Terran Council chambers, Admiral Ryder watched the screens, his face breaking into a rare, fierce smile. The Armada was alive and moving, each ship activating with the precision of a well-rehearsed drill.
Look at them,
Counselor Moreno murmured, her eyes shining with pride.
They have risen.
Ryder nodded, his voice filled with admiration. Yes, they've been waiting for this moment. Every one of those ships was made to defend Terra. And now, they'll make sure Xorval will never set foot on our world or any other again. Xorval's ships, still advancing over Terra's skies, had only a moment to register the approaching Armada. As the human starships took to the skies, they closed in with an unrelenting purpose. Their engines roared as they rocketed upwards, streaking through the skies like steel-clad meteors. From the command deck of Poseidon's Guard, Captain Arya Callahan looked out over her crew, eyes blazing.
"Engage full thrusts! Bring us alongside Neptune's wrath! They won't know what hit them!"
The ship's engines bloomed with harsh light, and with a blast of energy it shot forward, joining ranks with the other vessels. All around them, the abyssal armada rose, each ship locking into formation, their hulls gleaming as they synchronized their movements in perfect unison. Every ship's design was both beautiful and intimidating, sleek and modernized, yet bearing the rugged, functional lines of Terran craftsmanship. Each vessel had been updated with advanced shielding, plasma cannons, and an array of weapons optimized for close-quarters combat. From their ports, rows of railguns and ion cannons aimed forward, the armada preparing for a full-scale assault. A transmission went out from the fleet, broadcasting to every Xorval ship in the area. It was a voice, calm and steady, laced with defiance.
"This is the Terran armada. Terra is ours. Retreat or face annihilation."
The Xorval, a creature of one mind, had no concept of fear. They pushed forward, eager to consume this new force, unaware that this was not simply another battle. This was humanity's stand. As the armada reached Xorval's bioships, plasma bolts blazed across the sky, striking with pinpoint accuracy. The first wave of Xorval drones fell in seconds, their bio-armor no match for the Terran cannons. The ships that survived were crushed by the armada's sheer force as Terran vessels blasted through their ranks, breaking the Xorval formations. The sky became a chaotic sea of fire and shadows, Xorval pushing back with its own monstrous strength, but each attack was met with an unyielding Terran response. The starships flew with the agility of fighters, maneuvering around their massive opponents and using their speed to outmatch Xorval's brute force. From her position, Captain Callahan watched as Neptune's wrath cut through a Xorval bioship with a blinding arc of plasma, cleaving it in two. Her lips curled into a determined smile.
"Keep pushing! Show them no mercy!"
Across Terra's surface, the people watched as their defenders ascended, ships streaking upwards, a shimmering wall of steel standing between Terra and oblivion. Children clung to their parents, watching with awe. Elderly veterans raised wary hands in salute, seeing echoes of their own sacrifices in this new armada. In the council chambers, Counselor Shen whispered, quoting an ancient text, his voice filled with pride.
"For the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of this world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds."
The armada, humanity's hidden might, rose with unstoppable force, scattering Xorval's ships across the heavens. Terra's oceans had revealed their secrets, and the sky blazed with humanity's answer to any who would threaten their home. With a final surge, the armada broke through the last of the enemy's lines within the atmosphere, the bioships disintegrating under the relentless assault. In moments, the remaining Xorval ships turned, falling back to high orbit in a chaotic retreat. The armada held position, hovering low over Terra like guardian titans, a fierce reminder that Terra's strength was never truly gone. The tide had risen, and with it, humanity's unbreakable resolve. The abyssal armada now cut upwards through the atmosphere, rising to meet Xorval in orbit with engines blazing. The sheer coordination of the Terran fleet was breathtaking. Every ship locked in perfect formation, each a testament to humanity's unity and unyielding nature. The armada broke into attack patterns, starships sweeping into clusters that shifted and moved like clockwork, each ship covering the next with a level of precision Xorval could never anticipate. The Xorval bioships, creatures of sinew and darkness, moved with a deadly grace of their own, organic weapons firing toxic spines and bolts of corrosive energy toward the oncoming Terran ships. The first wave of Terran ships took the brunt of it, their shields flashing under the assault but holding strong. Plasma bolts shot back in response, sizzling as they tore through the softer, fleshy hulls of biological creations.
"Target their primary tendrils,"
Captain Callahan ordered aboard Poseidon's Guard, eyes locked on the main Xorval ship ahead.
"Those things hold their hulls together.
Take them out, and they'll collapse from the inside. Poseidon's guard fired a rapid salvo of plasma rounds, each shot hitting precise points along the bioship's sinewy exterior. The alien vessel shuddered, its outer tendrils snapping like torn muscle fibers. It wobbled, the whole organism destabilizing as pieces of it drifted away in thick, dark clouds. Within seconds, a Terran destroyer moved in, unleashing a concentrated burst that pierced straight through the creature's core, shattering it into organic debris. Across the battlefield, Terran ships executed similar maneuvers, using precision and strategy to dismantle the alien fleet. Though each Terran ship bore only a fraction of the opposing ship's massive size, they moved with speed and tactical focus, exploiting the Hive's weakness to coordinated, decentralized attacks. In the heart of the Armada, Leviathan barreled forward, its railguns firing continuously, each shot tearing through bioships with cold efficiency. Captain Daniel Tran, a hardened veteran of the Virexian conflict, barked orders with rapid precision.
Form a perimeter around the heavyweights. Don't give those drones a chance to flank.
Around Leviathan, smaller Terran corvettes zipped back and forth, intercepting biodrones and firing on incoming clusters with swift, coordinated strikes. Each ship moved with deadly purpose, their agility in stark contrast to the sheer size of the lumbering attacking vessels. The Xorval, undeterred, adjusted their formation. Several of the larger bioships turned their attention to the humans' fleet's rear flank, releasing waves of toxic spores and swarms of smaller biodrones. The spores clouded the battlefield, corrosive particles swirling through space, latching on to Terran shields and eating away at them. Terran pilots quickly recalculated, ships shifting to keep out of range while clearing drones with targeted bursts of plasma. On board Neptune's Wrath, Commander Ilana Kova analyzed the situation, her voice level but urgent.
"Deploy counterspore cannons," she commanded. "Clean those drones out and keep formation tight."
The ship's cannons shifted, releasing streams of charged particles that cut through the spores, dissolving them before they could breach their defenses. In the same motion, Neptune's Wrath unleashed a concentrated railgun barrage that struck a massive cruiser, tearing through its central spine with a powerful shockwave. The creature's ship shuddered, releasing a high-pitched wail that echoed through the void as it collapsed into itself, its pulpy remains floating lifelessly. Through the chaos, Xorval continued to press, sending their remaining ships in a desperate surge to break the Armada's lines. The hive mind's presence was ever present, each bioship pressing forward with an animalistic fury, throwing themselves at the Terran vessels in a last-ditch attempt to breach their defenses. Aboard Odyssey, one of the fleet's fastest cruisers, Captain Marcus Reeve watched as 3 bioships bore down on his vessel, their tendrils flared, mouths opening to release barrages of acidic energy. Reeve's fingers danced over the control panel, his voice calm.
Hold steady. Focus shields on the forward hull and prepare to evade on my mark.
The ship held its ground as energy blasts pounded against its shields, which flickered but held. At the last second, Reeves shouted, "Now!" And the Odyssey veered to the left, dodging the final blast and positioning itself in the blind spot of the closest bioship. Reeves smirked.
"Fire everything we've got."
The Odyssey's weapons systems activated in a unified strike, sending a hail of plasma and railgun shots straight into the ship's core. The massive bioship erupted, a shockwave rippling outward as pieces of it were torn apart. The remaining 2 ships hesitated, the hive momentarily disrupted, and in that brief pause, 2 other Terran frigates swooped in, taking them down with quick, surgical shots. In the command ship, Admiral Ryder watched the screens with steely resolve, his eyes sharp as he studied the field.
"They're weakening. Keep the pressure on their larger ships,"
he ordered.
"They'll fall apart without them."
The Terran ships surged forward, pressing the attack as Xorval's numbers thinned. The hive's coordination faltered under the relentless assault, its formations breaking apart as the bioships fell one by one. The enemy's tactics became desperate. Some ships rammed into Terran vessels, attempting to breach the hulls and destroy them from within. But each attempt was countered with swift retaliation. Captain Callahan on Poseidon's guard watched as a Xorval ship attempted a kamikaze dive toward her vessel. With steady hands, she adjusted their trajectory, dodging the bioship's charge and firing back, shattering it in one powerful blast. "This is our world!" she yelled, her voice echoing through the bridge. "Crawl back into the void you came from!" Around her, cheers erupted, voices filled with fierce pride. The Armada was holding, pushing Xorval back with each coordinated strike. The once overwhelming swarm had been reduced to scattered remnants, their unity fraying as Terran fire continued to rain down on them. In the Terran Council chambers, Counselor Moreno watched the scene unfold on the screens, her hand pressed to her chest. "We're winning!" she exclaimed, voice full of hope. Admiral Ryder nodded, a fierce grin breaking his stoic demeanor. "Yes, we're pushing them back." The last Xorval bioships, realizing their imminent defeat, began to pull back, drifting toward the edge of Terra's atmosphere. Terran ships pursued, ensuring none escaped. Xorval tried to reassemble into formations, but without its core hive ships, its cohesion crumbled, and the scattered biodrones drifted aimlessly. As the remnants of the Xorval fleet attempted to flee into the depths of space, the Abyssal Armada pulled back, holding position around Terra like sentinels. Every ship remained vigilant, awaiting any sign of further threat. The remaining Sol defenses would take care of the stragglers. Across Terra, civilians watched in awe and disbelief, cheering as the skies cleared, the invaders defeated. Children clung to their parents, their faces lit with hope, while veterans, silent but proud, watched with tears in their eyes. The Abyssal Armada, Terran's hidden might, had risen. And as it hovered in Terra's orbit, every Terran knew in that moment that they had been protected all along. The last of the Xorval bioships drifted in retreat. The Hive's unity wavered, the loss of the prime ship echoing through the surviving fleet as they turned away from Terra, slowly drifting out of orbit. Though Xorval had faced defeat before, this was different. The humans had managed not only to resist, but to strike at the very heart of Xorval. Far beyond Terra, hidden in the cold, dark void, Virexian scouts watched the retreat with a mix of disbelief and horror. High Scholar Thriss Carr sat in silence, his multifaceted eyes shimmering as he took in the sight of the defeated Xorval fleet scattering into the emptiness. The silence among his fellow Virexians was thick, a heavy weight bearing down on their collective pride.
They were defended all along,"
whispered one of the Virexian officers, her voice laced with fear. Thriss Carr could only nod, his mandibles clicking in frustration. "We miscalculated," he murmured, his tone laden with dread. "Humanity was never disarmed. They hid this from us again. They deceived us once more." Queen Zra-Ket's voice crackled over the comms, her tone filled with a simmering anger and disbelief.
"Explain this failure, Thriss Carr. How did the defenseless Terrans turn the Xorval away?"
The scholar struggled to answer, his voice faltering. They have an armada, Your Majesty, hidden within their oceans. They kept it from us beneath a soft exterior, waiting for the Xorval to come within reach. It was all a ruse, Your Eminence. They wanted us to believe they were vulnerable." For a moment, there was only silence on the line. Then Queen Zra-Ket's voice turned cold, laced with venom.
"We underestimated them again," she hissed. "But this changes nothing. Humanity may have won this battle, but their time will come. For now we must continue to wait, but they have again reinforced that they are not to be trusted."
Thriss Carr nodded, though he couldn't ignore the feeling gnawing at him, the unsettling realization that humanity, a species they had dismissed as weak, had proven itself once again, capable of both deception and destruction. The Virexians' betrayal had backfired, and now they were left only with the knowledge that Terra was more formidable than they could have ever imagined. As the Xorval remnants were hunted down just out of Terra's orbit, the Terran flagship Poseidon's Guard transmitted a message across all channels, reaching not only the defeated Xorval, but any who might be listening in the far reaches of space. This is Terra. Our world is protected, and our people are united. For we deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly miasma. We will cover you with our pinions, and under our wing you will find refuge. Our faithfulness is a shield and buckler. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness, nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. The broadcast ended, and a quiet, steady resolve filled the air. Across Terra, civilians watched as the Armada, humanity's hidden power, held position for a moment longer, a glistening constellation of steel and strength against the blackness of space. Then, in unison, the ships began their descent. One by one, the vessels drifted back down, piercing the clouds and slipping into the oceans that had hidden them for so long. Waves churned and settled as the ships returned to their resting places, leaving behind no sign of the power that lay beneath the surface. For now, the seas returned to calm, and Terra's people resumed their lives, aware of the vast strength lying in wait, ready to rise again should Terra's call ever come.